Hi all, Rick here, with a brief look into every missing Federation starship I could find. So, it actually takes quite a while before a starship is listed as properly missing in Star Trek, especially when it comes to deep space exploration missions where vessels can go extended periods without contact, with even months going by with no word. That being said, it is of course all dependent on expectation and circumstance, and eventually an investigating starship is sent to restore contact if possible, like the Zukovsky and Vico. Only if that then fails is the ship declared as missing. So, in this video I'm going to look at every ship I could find that was officially listed as missing for an amount of time and their fate. I will be drawing from multiple sources to answer some of these, as we don't have answers for all of them. First off, let's look at those ships that are listed as missing but we're fairly certain what happened to them. The Proxima, a Nebula-class vessel, vanished in 2373 in the Gamma Quadrant, as did the USS Maryland. These were listed as missing in action for around a year before the Dominion revealed itself to be outwardly hostile to the Federation, and while no proof was discovered, it seems likely that they are responsible for the destruction of these two early Starfleet attempts to unknowingly chart their territory. In a similar vein, the USS Cortez vanished in 2374 after battles with the Dominion along the Cardassian border. The Defiant was dispatched to search for it but never located anything, so technically the vessel is missing, but it was declared destroyed by Captain Sisko, and frankly, that is a likely outcome. There are probably many starships officially listed as destroyed that are in fact actually missing, based on partial evidence or likely scenarios. The Excelsior-class USS Cairo also vanished during the Dominion War and was presumed destroyed by a Dominion ambush in 2374 and listed as missing, presumed destroyed. However, in reality the vessel was teleported to the Delta Quadrant, and forcibly brought down on a Kazon training world by their poorly created artificial intelligence. This AI had been able to use a nearby Borg transwarp corridor to snatch up vessels in search of optimal pilots to train. This was uncovered 10 years later, and there were no survivors, as the AI's malfunction had led it to continue trials until its candidates were inevitably dead. Next up, I'm going to look at three ships that technically went missing and were declared as such, though we know exactly what happened to them. That would be the USS Voyager, Equinox, and the Protostar. The USS Voyager's fate is somewhat well documented, with its disappearance in 2371 when journeying into the Badlands in pursuit of the Marquis. This was its first true mission, and the investigation following up lasted 2 years. 4 years later, however, the ship made contact with Starfleet from the Delta Quadrant by sending their EMH doctor through an alien comm network to bring word of their survival back to the Federation. After another 4 years of travel, the ship made its way back to the Sol system. Along its route, it encountered the USS Equinox under Captain Ransom, who had suffered the same fate as the USS Voyager and been displaced to the Delta Quadrant earlier in 2371. While most of the crew integrated with the USS Voyager, many more were lost over the course of the journey, and the Equinox itself was destroyed. Records were amended in 2376 through further Starfleet contact with Voyager. As for the Protostar, that gets a little hazy because time travel was involved. It vanished in 2382 but was in fact sent forwards to the planet Solum before fleeing back in time but missing and ending up in 2366, crashed on Tars Lamora. There was a whole altered timeline that unfolded, but the long and short of it is that it was encountered in 2383 by Admiral Janeway, who eventually managed to retrieve it. Though eventually destroyed the following year, the vessel spent a little under a year listed as missing, when in reality it was missing for 17 years by its own calendar. The USS Bozeman, under the command of Captain Bateson, vanished into a time vortex in the Typhon Expanse, in 2278 being catapulted 90 years into the future. Here it crashed into the Enterprise D, causing the destruction of both vessels, but the resulting explosion reset the time loop. Eventually, they avoided disaster, and the vessel's fate of missing was revised into an active service once again. The USS Hera vanished in 2370, and 2 ships were dispatched to investigate. Neither was able to locate any signs of the Nebula class, and the ship was listed as missing, presumed destroyed. Despite Geordie LaForge thinking he may have uncovered its fate, he was mistaken, and its real fate remains unclear. In books, however, it is mentioned to have been located in 2383 after a natural phenomena resembling a quantum slipstream threw it into uncharted space beyond the galaxy's edge. Another story notes that eventually a band of Orion pirates claimed responsibility for its destruction. The USS Pegasus was under the command of Captain Pressman and vanished in 2358 while testing an illegal phase cloaking device. The events around its disappearance may have been covered up, but the vanishing was real. Literally. In 2370, the wreck was discovered in the Devolian system, having activated its phase cloak and drifted for years in this state until it interacted with an asteroid and rematerialized in its walls. The USS Olympia was under the command of Captain Lisa Cusack and sent out on an 8-year exploration mission of the Beta Quadrant. In 2371, the vessel crashed on a planet in the Rutharian sector, where the planet's energy field caused a time-travelling effect, having communications that pierced it shifted 3 years. Because of this, it was only discovered in 2374, and the communications with the stranded survivor were already too late to save her. The next 2 entries are very early mysteries: the Franklin and the Columbia. The USS Franklin was a Freedom-class Warp 4 vessel that was under the command of Captain Edison. After the Earth-Romulan War, the Franklin was assigned as an exploration craft and vanished in 2164 in the Loracas system, but disappearing around the Gagarin radiation belt surrounding that star. In the Prime continuity, as far as we know, it remains missing, while in the alternate Kelvin timeline, it was discovered to have been displaced by a wormhole and crashed on Altamid. The crew had survived by using the technology of another crashed vessel to splice their DNA with that of other shipwrecked individuals, while using their drone swarms to lure in more ships in the hopes of eventually salvaging something to escape. According to the books, the NX-02 Columbia eventually went missing in 2156 near the Tau Ceti system. During the height of the Romulan War, it was compromised by a telecapture system and destroyed the convoy it was to protect. In order to deny the Romulans capturing it completely, they detonated a photon torpedo and jumped to warp to fake their destruction, but were damaged in the process. With no other options, they had to fly at near-light impulse speeds, making use of time dilation to survive the trip to an M-class world. Somehow, it ended up as a wreck in the Gamma Quadrant, and these events are tied strongly into the Star Trek Destiny novels, which deviate substantially from the Prime timeline. In fact, technically, the vanishing of the Columbia 2 is non-canonical, as is its discovery 219 years later by Benjamin Sisko, and the surrounding mystery of how such an old ship ended up in the Gamma Quadrant. The Constitution-class USS Defiant was witnessed vanishing in 2268, as it drifted into a pocket of interphasic space in Tholian territory. This was because, unknown to the crew at the time, the Mirror Universe Tholians, from 104 years earlier, had created a weakening between their dimensions to lure something in to study. The effect of the interface drove the crew insane, and eventually they perished at one another's hands. The ship then fell through the realities and into the past Mirror Universe, where it was then taken in and studied by the Tholian Assembly of that realm. Of course, then the Terran Empire seized it and it catapulted their technology forwards 100 or so years, serving as the Terran flagship for some time. This fate was discovered by the USS Discovery during their sojourn in the Mirror Universe, but classified as part of the Temporal Prime Directive. The Defiant remains listed as missing in action. The Griffin was another Constitution class that vanished in 2253 nearby to the Klingon territory, and it was assumed to be a casualty of Klingon Federation tensions. The Klingon Empire never brought it up, and no wreck was found, with prior communications revealing no issues. Investigations suspected a warp jump gone wrong, possibly in an escape attempt, but it was not for another 9 years that the ship was found and recovered. It was surveyed by the USS Enterprise before being referred to Division 12 for further study, as the Enterprise was unable to ascertain its current nature. Some malevolent intelligence had contaminated the vessel, driving the crew to madness with illusions and seeming hauntings. Unable to quantify the scientific nature of the event, the ship remains in the custody of specialists for further study. Probably the most prolific mystery is the vanishing of the USS Enterprise, NCC 1701B. Once more, this disappearance is technically non-canon, but across numerous media it is declared as missing in action. The flagship of the Federation was under the command of Captain Johnson Jr., and rendered aid to Bajoran refugees in 2328 along the Cardassian border before making it into unexplored space a year later. Records recovered state that some form of infection had taken hold of the crew, and an investigation was undertaken after contact was lost. No wreck was recovered, and its course remained unclear, with it formally listed as missing in action a year later. Speculation is abound, with some suspecting that whatever contaminated the crew was so virulent that they made an effort to obscure its location in the hopes of quarantining the sickness, perhaps even piloting the ship into a star or something. Alternatively, with the Cardassians' tensions, it could be that they captured it, but that was also never confirmed. While this remains completely in the realms of Apocrypha, the fact that it is a missing Enterprise captures the imagination both in-universe and without, with it being one of the more enduring, mysterious disappearances in Star Trek lore. 3 years later, the Ambassador-class Enterprise C would take over as the new flagship, and in those intervening years, the Shangri-La-class USS Titan acted as the stand-in flagship vessel. And that covers every missing vessel, their dates and circumstances of their discovery, or if they ever were found. Of course, these are the only ones I could find in canon, though many others have been listed as out of contact for some time, like the Valiant, but these were never officially declared m.i.a. for any lengthy time. We've got a good mix of those that were never found, accounted for, and even recovered, and of course many more that are probably not listed or merely assumed destroyed in records. Space is vast and magnificent, but it's also dangerous, and sometimes the curiosity of Starfleet leads to the demise of entire vessels. Thanks for watching this exploration of the missing in action ships. I've been Rick, and until the next one, goodbye.